Hi, my name is Cherise Janelle, and you're listening to Chapter 12 of Barbara Conklin's P.S. I Love You, book number 1 of the Sweet Dreams book series by Bantam Books. Copyright 1981. Harry, my elderly pup, has decided to join us and is snoring in his bed beside me while I read to you the latest installment of Mariah's adventures in Palm Springs. Chapter 12. The morning Paul entered the hospital looked the same as every summer morning in Palm Springs. The birds got up early after a restless night to start their chorus, and the sun popped out of the fluffy white clouds, looking like a round gold coin had just been cleaned with polish. From the west wing of the house, I could peer out of one of the upstairs windows and see Paul getting into his father's copper-colored Mark V. I could see a good part of his house, too. It was a one-story, strictly modern house that rambled all over the place. But the most fantastic thing about it was the pool. It was perfectly round, which is no big thing, but right in the middle of it stood a round slab, and on it a table with 4 wrought iron chairs. To get to the slab, you had to swim or use a wooden footbridge, like the kind that you see in Japanese gardens. I watched Mrs. Strobe come out of the house then. If she just looked up, she would catch me spying, I thought, but luckily she did not. I thought about how much his folks looked like grandparents. They were so much older than my own. Jim had filled me in on that one. The Strobes wanted a child for so long, and they'd been told by doctors that there wouldn't be any. And then it happened. Mrs. Strobe was 39 and her husband a year older. They were so happy you'd have thought they were going to bust with it. Mr. Strobe followed closely behind his wife. Dressed in a dark blue business suit, he looked like a banker. Mrs. Strobe was wearing a pretty, blue, silky-looking dress, and her hair framed her face beautifully. Paul had told me that she had dyed it brown up until last year, when his father finally broke down and told her that he really loved gray hair on her. So now she kept it that way. She made a stunning figure beside her husband. Paul had explained to me on the phone the night before that the operation had been pushed up to Tuesday morning because they had scheduled more tests for him all day Monday. I think I lack iron or something in my blood, he had informed me. No big thing. And then he had added that he would be home on Wednesday afternoon if everything went well. I hoped he was right about it being no big thing. My mother entered the bedroom. There you are, Mariah. She joined me at the window. Well, there they go, she said, her shoulder touching mine. Mom, Paul said he'd be home Wednesday afternoon if everything went well. What do you think he meant? I asked. Lumps like that can be malignant, she answered. Cancer. Lots of times when they discover cancer, though, they can start different procedures and treatments that will stop it from spreading to the rest of the body. That's why they didn't want to wait, I thought, and then I turned my face from the view of the car slowly pulling away from the house. Mom, do you think Paul could have cancer? My voice was so soft, a whisper that my mouth barely moved when I formed the words. Not necessarily. Some people seem to be prone to have little lumps or tumors, Mariah. Remember your great Aunt Helen? She must have had 10 removed from all parts of her body, and none, absolutely none, were malignant. Maybe Paul's like her. He looks like a very healthy young man, even though I'd say he's too thin. I doubt that there is any real trouble. The Strobes have an awful lot of money, and people like that can spend plenty on tests and more tests. Remember, Paul is their only child. And so it will be all okay, I said, leaving the window, heading for my own bedroom. I mean, if it is something, the Strobes have plenty of money to fix him up. My thoughts wouldn't go further. My mother gave me a strange look, opened up her mouth to say something, but then just gave me a peck on the cheek. "Hurry cleaning up your room, Mariah. I need you to help me polish the silverware this morning, and there's plenty of it." We left the bedroom. "Plenty of money," I had said to my mother. What if plenty of money wasn't enough? What if all the money in the whole world wouldn't be able to help Paul? I wondered if he was as scared as I was. I walked into Mr. Abbott's library and, scanning the titles, I finally found what I was looking for. Turning the pages of the medical encyclopedia, I stopped when I got to the section on cancer. I hadn't realized there were so many different kinds. I breathed a little easier after I read the section that said, in many cases, cancer could be cured completely. If the worst was true and what Paul had was cancer, the doctors would be able to give him drugs and eliminate it. The treatment could be painful, though, and I prayed Paul wouldn't have to go through anything like that. The rest of the day was spent helping my mother in the kitchen. We polished all of the Abbott silver together, but I might have been on another planet for all the conversation we didn't have. I polished the forks. I hated to do forks, especially since you had to make sure you got inside all of the tines. I got the funny feeling that my mother had purposely given me them to keep my mind off of Paul. "I'd like to visit him," I said, placing the last fork in its dark maroon velvet sack. "You can't," my mother said. "They just don't want anyone around." "How do you know?" I asked, surprised. "I talked with Mrs. Strobe on the phone. She called here that day you were all at the Indian reservation. She was upset that Paul had gone when she had specifically asked him not to." "I didn't know that. He hadn't mentioned it," I said, my feeling of surprise turning to annoyance. Mrs. Strobe treated Paul like a small child. My mother finished packing the little maroon sacks in the huge wooden box that held the entire set of silver. "I can't figure the woman out," she exclaimed. "She's never met me, yet I get the feeling that she doesn't like me. Just listening to her voice, she told me, or I should say announced, that Paul was scheduled for his operation and that she had wanted him to get lots of rest beforehand. I told her that if we'd known about that, we would have certainly kept you all home." "But what did she say about the hospital?" "It's funny. I didn't even mention it. She came right out with it herself. She said that if we were thinking of visiting her son, we should think twice. First of all, the time would be spent with numerous blood tests and so forth, and then following the operation, she didn't think he would be quite up to it. She did say perhaps that Paul could receive visitors after he came home." I smiled. Receive visitors. Sounds like you have to have a name card to get past the butler. Secretly, I was glad to have an ally. "Don't be nasty," my mother said. "The woman is obviously upset about her son entering the hospital. Paul is their only child, and they're almost fanatical in overprotecting him." That Thursday, I received a letter from Elaine. I read it several times just to fill in the time until Paul came home. "Dear Mariah, I love your house. We all do, even the boys. My mom wants me to add she is being very careful that they behave and do not hurt anything in your lovely home. At first, I couldn't sleep because of the waves and all, but now they seem to lull me to sleep. Our whole family goes down to the beach every day where we found the most interesting tide pools not too far from your house. You must know the spots. The boys love the pools and poke around them for hours. We found several starfish washed up with the seaweed, and the boys brought one in the house and hid it in the closet. I think they planned to take it back home and put it on their bedroom wall, but things didn't turn out. It took my mom several days to find out what the horrible smell was, Anyhow, it is all okay now because she sprayed everything with Lysol. We're going to cook hot dogs down on the beach tonight, so I better go for now. Before I do, I must tell you that I did start to read some of those books. I especially like the one about the girl who is trying to find out about her husband's family secret. And she is up in the attic, and her sister-in-law walks in and tries to kill her. Don't tell me what happens. Always, Elaine Gretel. P.S. Paul Strobe sounds great. Are you telling me everything? I sat on the window seat and watched the sun set and then the darkness settle in around the lacy woodwork on the ivory gazebo. All I could think about was Paul. Once in a while, the name Jean reared its ugly head, and I pushed it, or tried to push it, out of my thoughts. Maybe Jean was visiting him in the hospital. Maybe Jean was rich, too, and that's why Mrs. Strobe didn't like me running around with Paul. Wouldn't she want only the best for her rich son? When I brushed my teeth that night, I said to the girl in the mirror, through toothpaste and all, "Disgusting! She can't be thinking that. That's so narrow-minded." The girl with the foamy mouth laughed back at me. "Oh, yeah?" she said. And I groaned and scrubbed even harder. Later that night, I picked up my pen and started the letter I owed Elaine. How are you and my house so far? Did you get to Laguna and see all the neat shops? Do you surf yourself, or do you just watch them like I do? If you like to fish, you might drive over to the pier in Huntington Beach. That city also has the greatest library around, in my opinion. Also, don't miss visiting the Queen Mary in Long Beach. I sound like a travel agency or a television commercial. I ought to get a commission. And then I ended the letter with, on top of my white chest of drawers, you will find a jewelry box my father made for me when I was 3. Inside is an Easter egg that Kim blew out last year and then painted it blue and dotted it with tiny silver stars. It looks just like the sky here, just before dark. Well, anyhow, the blue, that's the exact color of Paul's eyes. I mean it. Now, isn't that something? That night I wrote in my notebook, when we stand together, my head just comes up to his shoulders. He has nice hands. When he helped me climb his rock, he held his hand out to me, and I took it. It felt warm and strong, and I had the funny feeling that as long as I held on to his hand, I would never fall. End of Chapter 12. Chapter 12 Commentary. In this chapter, Mariah is caught between her anxiety of Paul's hospital visit and trying to understand the reality of her feelings toward him as they become closer friends. We also hear from Elaine Gretel, the girl that is staying in Mariah's house in Laguna Beach. This provides a nice continuity to the storyline and is an emotional touchstone for Mariah during this period of new uncertainty. Thank you for listening to Chapter 12 of P.S. I Love You by author Barbara Conklin, published by Bantam Books, copyright 1981. Join me tomorrow as we find out what happened with Paul's hospital tests when he returns home.